very, very busy today. It's unbelievably busy. Now we have 2 critically ill patients going out, and every bed is full.
The true story of healthcare in the United States. The closure of medical facilities. This is one community that said no. And won.
Westfield Memorial Hospital and the ER saved my life. If it hadn't been here in place, I would not be sitting here now. I wouldn't be able to communicate, and I might not even exist.
Westfield Memorial Hospital emergency room saved my life.
Westfield Memorial Hospital saved my life.
If it wasn't for Westfield Hospital, I wouldn't be alive today. It saved my life.
Westfield Memorial Hospital emergency room saved my life.
The emergency room at Westfield Hospital saved my life.
In 2006, Westfield Hospital saved my life. My brain abscessed and I had to have emergency treatment, and they stabilized me, found the problem, and arranged transport for me to get to Pittsburgh, where I had to have emergency brain surgery. And Westfield did the excellent job that they do and found my problem so that I was able to get back on my feet again and come here and work as an EMT and as a fire chief.
Woke up in the morning with severe abdominal pain and came here and found out that I had a ruptured tubal pregnancy. I did not know I was pregnant, and I was already hemorrhaging, and I had to go into emergency surgery, and without this ER being here, I would have bled to death before I could have gotten to a different ER.
1995, I had a stroke at home here, and in minutes the emergency crew was out to deliver me to the Westfield emergency room, and within minutes, and that really saved my life.
Got into the ER and my heart rate was 270. They got me right in. They put other people aside to treat me, and they fixed my heart rate. And if I had to have gone to Dunkirk or Jamestown, I don't know if I'd still be alive.
I had a heart attack in Meter's Restaurant, and if it wasn't for the help I got in Meter's Restaurant and the Westfield Hospital emergency room, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you now.
If it wasn't for Westfield ER, I would have lost my husband 3, if not 4 years ago. We need that hospital left open.
I was hemorrhaging from an artery, got in the car, drove myself home, and from there to the hospital emergency room, all of which was a distance of about 3 blocks. They stabilized me, put me on a helicopter to St. Vincent's, at which case I lost consciousness on the way, and they gave me 4 units of blood at St. Vincent. I never would have made it had the Westfield Hospital emergency room not been available.
Westfield Hospital saved my mother's life in 1998 when she was visiting a Chautauqua institution.
As an EMT on a call, I took 4 patients in and actually had a heart attack myself going into AFib, which required immediate shock of 200 joules twice in order to revive me. My cardiologist informed me that if I had not been at Westfield Hospital, I never would have survived.
The Westfield emergency room saved my mother's life and gave us 2 more years that we could spend with her and she could spend with us. And we're very thankful for them.
As a result of that emergency room, I feel my daughter's life was saved. She had been hit by a vehicle. The first time she was hit, she got thrown up on the windshield. The second time, she went underneath the vehicle. The man took off and dragged her underneath his vehicle 196 feet with her bicycle. It crushed up against her. Had the ambulance not arrived within the short period of time that they arrived from Westfield Memorial Hospital, she probably would have died.
But with Tom, my husband now, he has a defibrillator pacemaker, and it shocked him once, just recently. And if the emergency crew hadn't been able to come, he wouldn't have made it.
Speaking on behalf of the town board and the entire community of Ripley, we think it's critically important that our Westfield Hospital emergency room stays open. A lot of good reasons for that. The impact on volunteers, the employment, the snow that we get, and the severe storms that we get. But the most critical thing is the fact that Westfield Memorial Hospital emergency room saves lives.
The Westfield Hospital emergency room and the hospital itself is very self-sufficient. They got a highly trained staff down there. They're very good with patients. The patient turnaround in and out for minor stuff is very good. It would be a very devastating on this area in Western New York if they were to close this emergency room.
People's lives depend on the quickness in an emergency, and we're going to take that away from them if we lose Westfield's emergency room.
Anybody who's ever done CPR, I mean, doing CPR is exhausting. I mean, and if we do it in town here, and like I say, most of our runs, from the time we pick up the patient to the hospital, it's probably 15 minutes at the most. And when you get to the hospital doing CPR, you're exhausted. I can't imagine what it's like if you're going to be doing that for 30 to 45 minutes, doing CPR in the back of a rig going down the road. I mean, you got a golden hour that they talk about to save lives, and you're blowing our golden hour right out of the water.
In the summertime, in the 9 weeks of summer season at Chautauqua Institution, our primary calls are rescue calls. We do approximately 300 calls in the summertime.
Ripley Ambulance Squad takes approximately 200 patients to Westfield Hospital every year. Our average turnaround time is 60 minutes. If Westfield Hospital emergency room closes, that turnaround time is going to be anywhere from 2 to 2.5 hours.
It's critical that they keep the emergency room open with I-90 where it is, right beside us, and the train tracks. We need to save the ER.
Westfield Memorial Hospital services over 13 small communities like ours. And if we lose that, we're going to lose a lot of lives.
Just been here too many years and seen what Westfield Hospital can do to help us save lives. It's just a very critical part of this area.
This emergency room saves lives and has to stay open.
Communities in this area need to unite and stay strong and go after the state and try to prove our point that we really need the Westfield Memorial Hospital.
Senior citizens are in critical situations more often than just somebody who's not a senior. And heart attacks, strokes, and things such as that, it's going to wipe out a lot of people who could be saved easily and quickly if they could get to an emergency room within that golden period of time.
It's wrong for the state to say, in the name of efficiency, we're going to close this and basically slam the door in the face of people who need this kind of care.
The Westfield emergency room is essential to the health and well-being of the people in Chautauqua County. Without it, we have a major hole and everyone is at risk.
Absolutely devastating to our entire area, not just Westfield, but also Ripley, Sherman, Dunkirk, Fredonia. They do not have the time for emergency vehicles to come in, pick up people and transporting to Erie or Jamestown or Dunkirk. We are going to lose lives.
911 emergency. I've been a resident of Westfield for 32 years, and I cannot imagine having a patient transported 30 to 40 miles to a hospital who's either critically injured or ill. It's just ludicrous that the state would think that a system like that would work.
You're risking people's lives and you're risking people's health to save a few dollars, and that is not something that we're happy with. This is a very small community. The community that's served by Westfield Hospital is small. We're hoping that that doesn't mean that we don't matter.
October 16, 2009. Dear Governor Patterson and Mr. Daines, I am writing to express the support of over 50 Amish families in the Westfield Mayville area to keep the greatly needed ER open 24/7 at the Westfield Memorial Hospital. I have lived in this area since 1976, and in these years I have not seen anything as unacceptable to the general public as the idea of closing the emergency room at Westfield Memorial Hospital. As a group, we, the Amish, plead, please, keep the Westfield Memorial Hospital open for everybody's sake. God bless everybody concerned. Representing the Amish, Mose W. Byler.
We value our rural heritage, and having this hospital to hold us together is a part of that. If we don't have this as part of our community, that's the glue that keeps people living in our area.
We believe that there are 4 beds someplace in New York State that could close without the deleterious effects on the population served that will take place if, in fact, we're unsuccessful in getting this waiver for Westfield Hospital.
Every possible resource is being pushed towards keeping the emergency room open. If the emergency room closes, an essential piece of our healthcare infrastructure in Chautauqua County will close. That means not only our emergency services workers will be forced into extra duty, more expensive duty, and potential elimination of some of this emergency services work, and as a result people will be further injured or potentially die because they don't get to the hospitals when they need to. Certainly all of our costs will go up because of that. Every possible resource at the county level, and Senator Young, Assemblyman Parmet, and everyone else involved in this is pushing, trying to get Dr. Daines to make the right decision here, and that is to reverse this order that's out there to eliminate those 4 beds in Westfield Hospital, allow us to continue to deliver the great service we do and absolutely essential service to the people in Chautauqua County.
8 years ago, I had a heart attack, and without the care that I received in the emergency room, I don't know what would have happened. A year after my heart attack, I had a nuclear stress test. Because of the care I received at Westfield, they found no damage to my heart.
My wife and I went to Westfield Memorial Hospital in 2006 for a routine blood pressure test. And the nurse put the cuff on me and said, "Holy Mother of God, you're going to the emergency room immediately." I had a runaway pulse of over about 160. After that, why they transported me to Hammett, where I enjoyed a delightful 10-day stay. Thank God for that dear nurse that did that, because my cardiologist said I'd be 6 feet under now.
I was working at the farm outside in Westfield, and I was clearing some big rocks from the field, and I was stung by a bee, actually 2 or 3 times, by a hive of ground bees. And my throat started swelling, and my son, who was 16 at the time and didn't have a license, he only had a permit, had to drive me directly down here to the hospital. We live approximately 3 miles from here. And I got here, and they stuck an IV in me and filled me full of adrenaline and Benadryl and saved my life. By the time I got here, my throat was pretty much completely closed up.
If this hospital really does close in the near future, it's going to devastate the village of Westfield. It's a payroll that will be leaving the area. There'll be people out of work. People moving to this community have said that one of their prime reasons for coming here, not only because of the nice little community we have and the slow pace of life, we have a good hospital, we have a good library, and we have a lot of things going for us. But if this hospital closes, we're not going to have that going for us anymore. We haven't cost the state of New York any money at all. Our money comes from St. Vincent's Hospital and the patients we have here. With all of the emergency crews not responding, we'll have to go to a private ambulance service. Now, if the state forces us to close, is the state going to pay for the private ambulance service that would be housed here or somewhere nearby? We have two major railroads going through here. We have Interstate 90, we have 394, Route 5, and Route 20. Every day there's tank cars going through here. Who knows what's in them? If we had a major catastrophe on one of the railroads and had a lot of tank cars tip over, if there's toxic fumes, where are these people going to go? Some of the people from Albany do not realize the kind of snowstorms that we have here.
The roads are closed. Station we have right now. The way is closed until almost Buffalo, and then near Buffalo you can get back on the thruway and head east. That's where you're headed.
I've lived here 50 years. There's been times when all the major highways are closed. We can't get anyplace else. So if we don't have an emergency room, where are these people going to go? 1979, I had a heart attack. I was taken to the Westfield Hospital. I was stabilized and airlifted to St. Vincent's Hospital in Erie, where the doctor told me that I had 95% blockage in all four of my arteries. Had I had to been transported to Jamestown or Dunkirk, I probably wouldn't be here speaking to you today. If the emergency room closes, I do believe that the entire hospital will close down.
The hospital and the administration did an excellent job of presenting the case for Westfield Hospital, but one of the things that didn't seem to me to be considered was the geography. It may look good on paper, but when you get here and see what the roads are like, the conditions are like, it just doesn't make sense. So I think we have a system that's working right now, and I'd like to see it continue. We have a national debate on healthcare, and here we have something that works very well. I think it's a model for rural healthcare. If you were to look at it carefully, we're using technology, trained personnel, and it's meeting our needs here. I hope that they will take that into consideration when they see the effect that it has on lives here in Western New York.
We answer 465 calls a year, and it's going up every year. We're getting an older and older community, a lot more elderly. We have a 125-bed nursing home in town that we go there 4 or 5 times a week easily. We have the New York State Thruway where we have many accidents out there with multiple victims. Westfield Fire Department is the only one between Westfield, Brockton, and Portland that can get on the Thruway. So we have to take care of our territory plus Brockton and Portland's territory. I've been asked about why we just don't keep it open anyway. Well, what they do, the DOH, Department of Health, just takes away your license and you can't operate after that. I mean, but there's no reason in the world that I can see financially or any other good reason why they should close this hospital.
Looking at it from a public safety perspective, it's strategically located in the county of 1,069 square miles in an area that has no other hospital coverage, and its consumers are in a wide area around the hospital. So it really means significant delays in the treatment of sometimes critically injured people that could, and without exaggeration, could and will result in the loss of life. And there is no dollar figure you can put on that.
I'm telling you, there are going to be lives lost. I could be a vegetable. It's just criminal to think a hospital that's being well run, and I feel confident, financially secure, and why should something good be destroyed?
Just enough to make me uncomfortable.
But I was in the right place, I was in the right time, but it all began here in this eon.
It's not fair to us. It's not fair to our children. It's not fair to our grandchildren. And it's going to have a serious impact on this area economically. People move to areas, and one of the things they look for is how close is the hospital. The potential for loss of life is significantly increased by taking the level of care to a facility that's more than twice or 3 times the distance away. It's just common sense. If you have a patient that is in serious medical condition, our EMTs are very highly trained, but they can only do so much. You need a clinical setting for some of those cases. And yes, if they have to travel a further distance, we can expect more loss of life. This fire department here runs an average of 400 or more rescue calls in a year. The average rescue call for the members of this fire department take between 45 minutes and an hour. If Westfield Hospital is closed, the average call is going to take between 2 and 3 hours. Most of our volunteers, if not all of them, are people that are working in this community, and they need to have a paycheck. And it isn't going to take very long when an employer starts seeing their employees leaving for 3 hours at a time, sometimes maybe twice a day, and losing somebody for 6 hours. An employer just can't sustain that. They can't pay somebody to be on a rescue call for 3 to 6 hours a day. I think that there is possible need for a class action lawsuit of some sort to bring the Berger Commission to task on their decisions. And I really think that the communities need to stay strong in this matter and to be firm in the fact that we need that hospital to stay open.
I woke up about 3:30 in the morning and my tongue hurt. And I didn't know what was going on, so I went to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and it was swollen. So I told my wife, actually I couldn't speak, so I had to write it down, and I just wrote 2 letters, ER. So we had decided to go to the Erie VA. By the time we got to Brockton, which is about 7 miles from Fredonia, I couldn't breathe through my mouth anymore, and my tongue had swollen so much I couldn't close my mouth. I knew I was in some serious trouble. And so my wife looked at me, and she could see that too, and she said, "Do you want to stop at Westfield?" And so we pulled into the Westfield Memorial Hospital, the emergency room, and I wrote down, "I can't breathe." They called in the emergency room doctor, the attending physician, started administering epinephrine and also some antihistamine. The helicopter landed, and they were able to stabilize me enough for transport. And I would have never made it to Erie at all, which is another 30 miles down the road. Now, if this hospital had not been here and the emergency room had not been open, I would be dead today.
If it wasn't for Westfield Hospital, I wouldn't be alive today. When I got here, they had to wind up intubating me and flying me out by helicopter to another hospital, and I was trached then.
This came downhill from the federal government because the federal government basically was offering enhanced aid if, in fact, you downsized your total number of hospital beds in your state. And so George Pataki, reacting to that federal legislation, created the Berger Commission. The Berger Commission then basically recommended the closure of the Westfield Hospital. There were attempts to create accommodations within the Berger Commission report so that these hospitals didn't close. And with Westfield, they had to give up their obstetrics, but they were allowed for a period of time to keep the emergency room open. And currently what they're proposing to do is to keep open the emergency room, which requires that they have, in their estimation, 4 inpatient service beds. What we're currently asking for is a waiver from the Berger Commission finding to allow Westfield to continue the emergency room and have these 4 beds. Now the health department says, well, wait a minute, if we let you have these 4 beds, that may jeopardize
the total number of beds in the state such that the federal government would deny us a significant amount of federal aid that we otherwise would get if we reduce our bed count to what the federal government wants. So it becomes very complicated between the federal, the state, and the local level. The area is predominantly rural or small village populations, and the population that's in the service area is somewhat mixed in that it includes a fairly large number of old order Amish families who do not have high mobility because of their religious beliefs. They principally go to town in a horse and buggy. Emergency care is a very important element in rural America, in part because of the hazards associated both with agriculture and logging. And this area has both of those industries. And it's an unfortunate fact, but logging and agriculture are high-risk employments with injuries that need emergency care.
One evening, late night, we had a car Amish buggy accident, and it was an extremely cold night, and a young Amish girl, she was probably maybe 3 years old, had suffered some severe injury. We were able to transport to the Westfield Hospital, and the staff there was, with the equipment in-house, able to determine that she had a severe head injury and to treat that. Without a doubt, you know, if you don't have this connection close by within the golden hour that we need to keep people treated, that child may not have made it.
It doesn't make any sense to me why they'd want to shut down, you know, a hospital like Westfield that serves such a large area. I mean, we may not have a lot of populi in this area, but we also are the gateway to New York State. We have people traveling down Interstate 90 that when they come to the toll barrier, if they're not feeling well, we're their first call. You're putting the patients at a greater risk, the crew at a greater risk every time we go out in the wintertime.
It's just, you know, for us, we're bewildered by the fact that we would even consider closing the Westfield Hospital emergency room.
If the Westfield ER closes, it would take our saves to zero. It would be 25 minutes to the closest receiving hospital. That's a long time to do CPR. It means that 2 or 3 people can't do CPR that long. It's physically not possible. You couldn't put enough people in the ambulance to do CPR that length of time.
I'm one of the patients from Westfield. 5 years ago, I had a heart attack. Really didn't know what was going on. Went to Westfield I was taken to Westfield, and I was there maybe 10, 15 minutes. They evaluated what was going on, stabilized me, put me on a helicopter, and flew me to Erie.
If I was actually born in the Westfield Memorial Hospital, I just feel that without the Westfield emergency room, there will be many, many lives in this community that could be lost.
We have a community of many elderly people who have lots of needs for emergency rooms. Also, we have a lot of Amish people that live in nearby areas that do use the emergency room. Can you imagine traveling by horse and buggy a long distance? I certainly wouldn't want to. We need to keep Westfield Memorial Hospital emergency room open.
70% of our calls go to Westfield Hospital. We do probably about 185 to 190 calls per year, EMS calls. This does not include fire calls. If Westfield Hospital emergency room were to close down, it definitely would have an impact, and it could cause lives. It caused people to die because we could not get them to an advanced emergency room quick enough.
It's multiple townships that immediately are served. Obviously Westfield, Portland, Chautauqua, Ripley, Pomfret, and moving further south, the town of Sherman. Those areas are probably the most significant users of the facility, but in a crisis. And a good example is the recent flooding we had in Silver Creek. The Lakeshore Hospital was overwhelmed and the area was flooded. WCA's hospital was flooded. Brooks and Westfield were the only two hospitals accepting patients, and leaving it to one hospital would not have been able to cover that particular situation. And that's just one small event when you consider the size of the county. It really affected one township out of the 27 townships. This is a facility that provides service to people from the New York State Thruway that are injured.
911 emergency.
In that stretch between the Pennsylvania state line and halfway to Dunkirk. So it can really impact not only the residents of the county, but people who are passing through this county.
To Westfield at 1521.
We've heard over and over again, because we provide medevac helicopter service, well, we can just medevac these people to other facilities. Wrong, because we're restricted by weather. We're restricted by the use of a single helicopter. If that helicopter is in use, it might be in Pittsburgh, delivering a patient to a hospital when we need somebody transported from the Westfield area. It's common sense. This hospital emergency room has to stay open. It is our primary care facility for the inmates of the Chautauqua County Jail. We have to transfer those inmates from the jail to Westfield Hospital. If that hospital emergency room was not available, it would add an additional 25 miles of transportation for that inmate each way to either Brooks or WCA in Jamestown. The decision to close this hospital was based on numbers on a piece of paper and not logic. We're pleading with anyone in the state that has the authority to reverse this decision to do it immediately.
I definitely would like for them to keep the emergency room open at Westfield.
Please do not close the emergency room.
I certainly think that the people in Albany should reconsider and keep our emergency room open, because it is definitely needed for this area.
I've lived in this area since 1965, and I did work at Westfield Hospital way back when it was just a brick building, an old brick house. We used to find the emergency room of great benefit because people who were seriously injured could be brought there immediately, stabilized, evaluated, and then sent on to a better hospital where they could receive the proper care that we couldn't provide there. And for this hospital to lose its emergency room would be a great loss to our area.
I look after Mrs. Kofit here, who is 99. She was here when they put the hospital in. She's very upset with thinking the emergency room is going to leave. It's close by. It's a long haul to go to Erie in bad weather.
Support that we have received. We are thankful for the businesses who have allowed us to put petitions in their stores or in their office buildings to secure signatures.
And we need to have access to quality health care right here. And if people can't get to the emergency room, it's going to have a bad outcome. So we're working hard in Albany. I've hosted several meetings with the commissioner, and I'm hopeful that we can have a positive outcome.
I use the emergency room in Westfield. I want it to stay open all the time.
I don't think we should leave that, lose that hospital or the emergency room, because it's just another step towards cutting off our services around here. I was born in that hospital, and I've been taken down there a couple of times on emergency things, and so is my mother.
I think it's very important to everybody around here. It's very quick, convenient. They're very nice people. I know the Amish go there a lot, actually, and if they had to go somewhere like Jamestown, that could actually cost them their lives.
So I'm asking Albany, Governor, are you listening? Keep Westfield Hospital open, please.
I've had to deliver 2 babies myself just in the ambulance because time is the essence, and sometimes you just don't have that kind of time.
I think it's a total disaster. The ER here saved my life a couple of times, and if it was the closest place I could come, and that's when reason I'm here today is that the ER was open and able to take care of me.
When I sit here and look out and watch
the traffic and see the numbers of ambulances that come in here just while we're having our rehab, you know that it's very important. Nobody should be without the quickest service they can get.
I've worked here for 8.5 years, and I've seen the incredible volume that we get in the summertime, where we get 40, 50 patients a day. I'm lucky where I've been able to work at Brooks Hospital, WC Hospital, so I picked up shifts there, and I understand the patient volumes, and I understand how overwhelmed those hospital emergency rooms can be. The critical role we play here, when someone presents with a potentially life-threatening problem, whether it's abdominal pain or chest pain or someone who has a head injury, the assessment of those injuries, sure, someone who hits their head, maybe 1 out of 100, 2 out of 100 have a life-threatening problem that does need to go to the operating room and get flown to a more critical hospital. Without this hospital here, they would not get that care. People will sincerely die if this hospital is not here. There's not a question in my mind.
Somebody having a heart attack in an ambulance is extremely life-threatening, especially if they don't have like an ALS provider on board to start IV, give cardiac meds, evaluate the EKG and the monitor. Then you're looking at a very, very poor outcome for this person who now has to wait 30 minutes to get treatment.
I believe that it's important to keep it open. I've been here 25 years this week, and this is like my family. We have seen many people come in that have been, they wouldn't be here today if we weren't here. We've had cardiac arrests here. We've had people with all kinds of medical problems that we were able to stabilize and transfer to another facility, but without being here, they wouldn't be alive today. And I'm just thankful to be here, and I really hope that we can stay.
If the emergency room was to close, I don't want to think about the numbers of deaths that could happen, because it would be a tragic number.
If Westfield Memorial ER Hospital ER would have closed, it very well will cost lives, because they can easily stabilize that patient and make the ABCs of the patient, which airway, breathing, and circulation, and they can stop that bleeding and get their airways open. But if they have to travel from here all the way up to Buffalo or to Erie, that's a long ways.
You know, you just never know when you're going to need an emergency room. You need to have it there available for you 24/7. Because if this emergency room closes, people will die.
Coming engine, door 32, female subject unconscious. 1546, gate 909.
As a school nurse, I'm very concerned about the negative impact that closing the Westfield Hospital emergency room will have on the students, staff, and visitors at this school. The total population in the 7 school districts that are impacted because of geographic location by Westfield Hospital's emergency room closing are 5,100 students. Every day, the parents of these 5,100 students send their children off to school, place them in the care of the school for 7 to 8 and sometimes even longer hours a day. Chautauqua Lake School has a student population of about 900 students. They come to school, they play on the playgrounds, they perform physical activities throughout the school day. They're riding the buses to and from school, which is a risk, especially in inclement weather conditions that we have in this area. Playgrounds are historically known to be areas of high injury. Children sustain falls, concussions, injury to limbs. Many of the activities that go on during the school day place the student at risk for injury. Students here at Chautauqua Lake School compete in 14 different sporting events throughout the year. Many of these are classified as contact sports, which again have a high incidence of injuries that can be life-threatening. We send, and over the past several years have sent dozens to the emergency room. Time was a critical element in all of these emergencies. I can tell you right now that the cost of not having that emergency room service available is going to come at a great cost to the people of the school, the students, the staff, the visitors, the spectators, and the residents of this community.
In the Chautauqua institution properties, in the summertime in particular, there is such a growth in the population, and particularly of elderly people. And our call rate for the Chautauqua Fire Department, and then relative to others who assist us or who take our place when we are busy, is greatly elevated during the months of July and August. And during those times, the people who would be normally expecting to receive the kind of attention that they get now will be greatly disappointed. There is going to be a far longer transport time if it is necessary to always transport to Jamestown or to another facility in Dunkirk or Fredonia, or perhaps as far away as Erie County to Buffalo or Erie, Pennsylvania, and that simply would not be good.
We are, for the most part, offering basic or paramedic level care here, and they won't get to more detailed life-saving interventions, particularly people like stroke victims, of which the elderly are more common. You're really looking at probably some higher rates of fatalities.
The majority of the people that live here are elderly people, and elderly people need the ambulance more than younger people for the most part. I just can't see closing Westfield Hospital. It's a 20-minute round trip from here to Westfield. It's a lot closer. It's a fine hospital. They will ship you out to a bigger hospital if they get you stabilized.
If the Westfield Memorial Hospital emergency room is closed down, people will lose their lives because they're not going to get the care they need in the time they need. During the wintertime, weather conditions pose a threat to lives.
We have Amish people that live in our district. What are they going to do? I mean, they've got, and they're a big Amish community over towards Westfield. And it's just, they would have to go to Dunkirk, which would be another 45 minutes for them. There again, Westfield Hospital saves lives.
I pulled out to this intersection. Big bush was there. I didn't see the tractor trailer, and he ran into me. I went over top of it, and I landed on the right side of it. I finally landed the bike. I was turning left after I hit the truck, and it crashed. Ambulance come right away, and they picked me up and took me to the emergency room, and then they called for the helicopter. Then they flew me off to Erie. They stabilized me in the hospital. That ER wasn't there. They could never stabilize me. And then it would be a lot longer to go to another emergency room.
If they shut the emergency room at Westfield Memorial Hospital, it will have a great effect on our response to emergency calls. Number one, because of the travel distance to the other area hospitals that we'd have to use, there would be a great difference in the loss of life because of the time involved. And also we have members that would not be able to respond because they would not be able to commit to the time, because it's much longer to go to the other area hospitals than Westfield.
We're volunteer, we're not paid, we leave work, we lose money.
It's going to have an effect for the people who run the ambulance. My husband and I are both EMTs, and as self-employed people, you'll be asking us to give up an even greater amount of time, and we might not be able to make that choice every time to do every run.
Great. There we go, that's it. Here we go.
Closing down Westfield, I think it is a big mistake.
I was born there. It's excellent hospital.
I don't want them to close the emergency room at all. We need that emergency room there.
If this emergency facility is shut down, there will be more loss of life related to people in Chautauqua County.
It's a small town that functions well. It's a small town that has gone through some rough times, especially with the closing of the Welch's office in 2001. It's taken a number of years for Westfield to revitalize itself, to start attracting talent to this area. But the institutions in Westfield, including Patterson Library, the YWCA, the town and village governments, the McClurg Museum, and the hospital have all worked together to make sure that we are all moving in the same direction. A lot of young families have been moving to this small rural town because we've got diversity, we've got leaders who think progressively. As a father of young kids, it's terrifying to think that if we had an emergency, the closest emergency room would be Dunkirk or Jamestown. In my mind, that's just not good enough.
I've personally already used the emergency room, the Westfield emergency room, twice from anaphylactic shock. And I have antibiotic allergies. When you suffer something as extreme as anaphylactic shock, you have a limited number, so a need for speed, and you have a golden time that you can be treated before death.
This is a town that's thriving. One of the key ingredients, one of the key pieces of the puzzle is having adequate health services. The Westfield Memorial Hospital is absolutely critical for this small town to be a place where young families can move to and live and work. No amount of hard work, creativity, talent, forward thinking is ever going to replace an emergency room. The closing of Westfield Memorial Hospital, or the emergency room at least, has a lot of parallels with the closing of the Welch's offices. But the big difference is that through a lot of hard work and forward thinking, we've been able to get over that, get past that, and rebuild the community. If the emergency room were to leave, there's no way that we could replace it. It's an irreplaceable and permanent thing.
Dear Governor Patterson, the Town Board of Westfield has found the operation of the Westfield Memorial Hospital to be a model for rural health care, stabilizing and providing life-saving emergency care for residents and travelers. We find this effort to close our emergency room unconscionable. This action will imperil the health and safety of our residents and that of thousands of additional residents from our neighboring communities and who rely on the Westfield Memorial Hospital emergency room. We urge you to consider the welfare of our mutual constituents for the reasons contained in the attached resolution of this board. Support of the Westfield Memorial Hospital. Whereas the New York State Department of Health has mandated that by June 30th, 2010, the Westfield Memorial Hospital must close its emergency room and convert to a 12-hour urgent care facility. And whereas an urgent care facility with limited hours would not be able to accept ambulances carrying patients in true emergency situations, and those patients would have to be transported instead to emergency rooms in Dunkirk, New York, Jamestown, New York, or Erie, Pennsylvania, all more than 30 minutes from Westfield in the best of weather. And whereas the mandate would impose a severe hardship on the elderly, our significant Amish population, and anyone else in need of immediate medical attention, by delaying the provision of such treatment, it inevitably will result in greater injury or loss of life that would have been avoided with the immediate attention available at a true emergency care facility in Westfield. And whereas the emergency room is a vital part of the town of Westfield's economy, providing employment to more than 50 people, and its closure would have a severe negative effect on the tax base of the town of Westfield in a time of economic downturn. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Westfield believes that it is imperative for the health and welfare of its constituents and the surrounding area that Westfield Memorial Hospital continue to provide emergency room services, and that the quality of life in our community will be imperiled without the access to this critical facility, and be it further resolved that the town of Westfield strongly urges the Department of Health to re-examine the life safety impact of this decision and withdraw its mandate.
Let's keep Westfield Hospital's emergency room open!
What I'd like to do is thank the community of Chautauqua County and the areas that we service and all of the members of the community who live here and work here in Chautauqua County. We have had outstanding support for our initiative to retain the emergency room here at Westfield Memorial Hospital. We've had community members who have dedicated countless hours to the pursuit of getting signatures and having letters signed. Hopefully we will be able to retain the ER here at Westfield for many years to come.
There is a ship